Hey gang, welcome back to the channel in the southern Philippines. Today is going to talk to y'all about some changes in exiting the Philippines for foreigners such as myself or maybe you, because they have made some recent changes here. And I'll get into all the details of that when we get back to the house. But for now, what I'll tell you is that the arrival cards that they had been requiring for people to come into the Philippines, which is you had to register electronically before you came in, they're now extending that to actually when you depart as well. So I wanted to give y'all my thoughts on this stuff as well as exit clearances in general. I got kind of a love-hate relationship with exit clearances. In the United States, we don't have exit clearances, so we don't have to give any paperwork or anything. When we're leaving, you just get on the plane and you leave. Now, that's really good because you have that freedom and you don't have to deal with all of this pre-planning and stuff that you do in some countries to jump through hurdles at the last minute. But one of the problems that we do have because of that is basically we don't have international airport sections for like transiting. So when I go to a country, for instance, let's say I go to Korea or I go to Japan. So when I go in there, I don't actually, if I'm transiting, if I'm flying through Korea to say the Philippines from the United States, when I get into the airport at Incheon in Korea, I don't have to stamp out of the country. I don't have to stamp into the country and go through immigration or anything. I don't have to do any sorts of declarations. Basically, I just go into the international airport. I've already passed through security and customs because I've come off the airplane, and as long as I stay in that international section until my flight leaves, that's all there is to it. I don't have to jump through any hoops like I would in some of these other countries to where they don't have that. So in the United States, because we don't have international sections or exit checks or clearances, when you come in there, you always have to come in through immigration, which a lot of people have to get special visas just to transit the United States, even though they're only going to be there for a couple hours and they're not going to leave even the airport. And in some ways that's kind of ridiculous. It's one thing that we do have to deal with though because of that. Hey, check that out. Speaking of airplanes and international travel. This Etravel departure card basically is going to replace the old paper cards that you would use to depart the Philippines. It's a little bit more complex, I think. It asks some things that, quite frankly, I think that are silly. But when the most important thing to remember about this is that you have to do this no later than, I've seen 72 hours is the earliest you can do it before your plane departs, and no later than, I've seen 3 hours and 4 hours. So you don't want to be showing up to the airport not having this completed right before your flight, because you might not be able to make it through immigration unless you have done this ahead of time. Now, once you complete this whole series, it's going to give you a QR code, which you can store on your phone or you can print out paper copies of. Whenever I take these things nowadays, I always take paper copies, just because I trust that more than if I can't get my phone turned on or some other problem happens with the digital devices. There are some scam websites that are still out there that are trying to, based on the arrival ones, that they're trying to get your information and they're trying to scam you. So you want to make sure that you're going to the official website, and that is going to be at etravel.gov.ph. And then it's going to come up with a form that you're going to complete. You're going to give it your name and your contact information. What's really important about this is that you want to make sure that whatever is on your passport is what matches the information that you're entering into this online form. And in order to do that, you're going to have your passport. So you have your passport information and number. You're going to have your plane tickets, or at least your boarding passes, so that you can get the flight number and the seats. Actually asked you for your seat numbers off of those documents, and you're going to have your contact information. It's going to require you to give a telephone number. I don't think anybody's going to contact you on that. When I was looking at it, I just used my Filipino telephone number. Again, once you're gone and out of the country, it doesn't matter anyway. They're always going to contact you on it. But it does have to have a valid email address, because you are going to get emailed confirmation that this thing was completed correctly. And the Etravel form asks really for some pretty peculiar information. Like, it wants to know your profession, it wants to know where you're going, which is all kind of odd. I don't know why it cares where you're going. And it wants to know the reason that you're actually leaving the country, which is unusual because most people who are coming in on a tourist visa are leaving because their vacation is over, except for those that stay really long term. But it asks those questions, you fill those out. Make sure the information, very important that it matches what's in your passport, because that can kick it out. Now, if things change, there's an option on there that you can go back in and edit it after this is all done. So in other words, if your flight were to get canceled and you had to switch flights, or you were going to switch destinations that you were going to, there is an edit that you can go back in using your same information that was given you in that QR code and edit that information to update that in case something happens with there. That was one of the big questions that I had, was what happens if at the last minute your flights change? Do you have to go in and start a whole new QR code? And apparently you don't. They've taken that into account. So this system was actually really much better thought out than a lot of the other stuff that I've seen over the last 2 or 3 years from different countries. This is supposedly going to make, one, you don't have as much paper that's going to be put out there and things to keep up with, but the idea, I guess, is this will speed you more through immigration. We'll see. My guess is you're still going to get asked the same departure questions that you're always asked through immigration, but who knows, maybe it will speed it up. At least, if nothing else, it'll reduce the amount of paperwork that has to be done on physical paper. Now, this is going to be rolled out starting April 15th, and my understanding is after May the 1st, the entire paper system will be scrapped. So if you're going to the airport, you really need to be aware of this before you try to exit the country. Obviously, you can now tell I was getting ready to leave the country to go do some things, to take a trip. So I was looking at it if anything had changed there, and I was not aware of this until I started researching it and found this out. So it's something that could catch a lot of people unawares, that they have to have this done before they get to the airport. And again, I'm seeing conflicting information, whether it's 4 hours or 3 hours. I would just make sure that it was done a minimum of a day in advance. Nothing in the contact information was asking about vaccinations or COVID stuff, so it doesn't seem to be targeting that anymore. And God, I don't know why they would care, since you're leaving the country anyway. But again, that's April the 15th, and it's going to be anytime anybody's leaving after that. And then by May 1st, the paper system should be totally obsolete, and it'll give you that QR code. You print it out, or you have the digital copy so that you show them when you're going through immigration so that you can exit the country. So overall, I really don't like all of these hoops that we have to jump through, even though in this case it's supposed to simplify it. I would prefer some of these countries just go back to normal make before we had the whole pandemic situation, where international travel was so much easier. You didn't have to jump through so many hoops, and quite frankly, do so much research, not just coming into countries, but trying to figure out how you're going to leave that country, in addition to where you're going to go next, what you have to have taken care of, whether it be vaccinations or whether it be, you know, waivers or whatever that you have to get in and get out of these countries. I would like to go back to the day when international travel was much more simpler. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of these things are going to stick around. It's very hard once a country implements something for it to go back and get rid of those things. All right, gang, if that was helpful, if you like that stuff, make sure you hit the like button. It tells YouTube that other people can find this information useful, especially if they're going to be leaving the Philippines. And if you haven't already, subscribe so that you can find this channel again in the future. And I will see you in the next video.